let's talk about the transfers in Uganda. I think since I started following the sport, I haven't seen a player moving from one club to another on a good wage. Most of them wait for the end of the season, they get their contracts done, go get their own money. And I had a discussion with a colleague, and we concluded that this is very unfair to the clubs, that these players, these are kind of selfish moves because the team has given you the opportunity. Let's speak out for Muhammad Shaban. Eh? KCCA gave him the opportunity, he shined from KCCA. Let's agree on that. And at the end of the season, you refuse to sign, extend a contract with the club, and boom, you move out. Where does it leave our clubs? Because the transfers, this small money that rotates in clubs can help them increase on their budgets. Because if I have my player Imran who is at KCC and I sell him to Villa or Vipers at 120 million, so you see that can boost my revenue for the upcoming season. Just pick up from there. Where does this leave our sport, particularly these clubs, as they're also struggling with the finances?
Well, that is uh, that is very unfortunate. Very, very unfortunate that clubs are in this major mix of transfers. That saga of a player called Emmanuel Ajo, who apparently, according to you, has been signed by three clubs. I'm not sure of the third club. Maybe you can let me know, because what I know is that it was AC Villa and NEC. I don't know which club is has come in third, but it's disappointing really, because you might look at that situation and ask yourself, you have to ask yourself some questions. Is the player still having a running contract with his team? Is he a free agent? Is the agent involved in finalizing the deal? These are some of the questions you need to ask, and it is frustrating that until now that transfer saga has not yet been solved, because we have been hearing rumors that it's supposed to go to the next level, where the federation is supposed to be involved and try to find a solution between the player and the clubs that are involved. But up to now, we are yet to find any information, any official information or official um, announcement from the federation, which I hope is going to be very soon. But at the same time, we, as a footballing country that is still in the development phase and has not yet reached the peak of football in terms of bringing in finance, bringing in money that is sustainable, I don't think we can pick out a club that is 100% sustainable. Maybe Chitara has been trying to show that recently, but the other teams, there is still question whether the clubs are fully sustainable. And if our clubs have not yet reached that level, then other problems will also arise. Other problems will also start to come up, and these are some of them, because there is some sort of disorganization, some sort of misunderstanding from the player. Because if the player is able to sign both contracts, if that is true and the player has signed both contracts, then the player should also be at fault. If that is the case, the player should also be at fault. You can't tell me that if I am going to sign for AC Villa tomorrow. I sign the contract, and then a week later, a certain team comes and maybe offers you more money or offers you a better deal, and you also sign that contract. It is going to mess you up. It is going to mess up your career. The reason why other clubs will also look at that and say, this player also has his own issues. Let us not look at this player. It's very unprofessional. But also, you must look at the people around the player. Sometimes, and I believe this is one of the major problems that we have as as footballers that are within Uganda, to mention, there is no general professionalism or general understanding with contracts, with who is managing the player, with probably future planning. I think that is something that is completely lacking. It is that is something that should be a basic understanding of a career. You must know where you're heading to. You must know what you're signing for. You must know the physics behind what is going to happen next season. Otherwise, if you don't, and your job is to walk on the pitch, play the ball, play the football, and come out, and at the end of the day, you have your salary, then you'll not understand. You know, you might get a good deal, a club will come for you abroad from the top countries, and you might not understand what is in the contract. And at the end of the day, you are messed up. Why? Because there is lack of understanding. And that is something that has to change realistically. I am not sure. We are all not sure what has happened with that player and the two clubs. We are not yet sure. But you look at that picture and you clearly know that there is some confusion between the player, the management, the people that have been involved, probably the two clubs, because if the second team signed this player, we don't know which team that is. Should they be knowing where this player was before or where what this player has done before signing for them? You should be aware if you're a club, a professional club, whether you're AC Villa, whether you're NEC, whether you're any other team, you should be knowing what this player has done before coming to you. That is where professionalism probably stops for me. And it is a big, big question. Players are still lacking the understanding of the game. They are still lacking. We know of many players that have retired, former Uganda Cranes players that are still that are not sustaining themselves. Reason being, maybe they didn't understand the physics behind managing yourself, planning for the future, and all that. Maybe recently there has been some initiatives to help that, but it's not enough. It's not enough. These clubs, these players need to understand what the precautions are, what they come with when you make such mistakes. Because next season, a young player like Emmanuel Ajo, who has been not only on the radar for those two teams, but even KCCA was also looking at a player like him in January. How if a player like him sits out for one season, you can imagine what that will do to him in terms of his development. It's a big blow. It's really a big blow. And I'm very sure that him as a player who maybe has signed both contracts, he will now be thinking, I've probably done a big mistake here. Because both clubs, we're hearing that he's training with one club, and on the other side, one team, one of the spokesperson has confirmed that he's their player. So there is a lot of there's a lot of confusion. There really is. I don't I don't I don't see this as something that people should be surprised about, because it has probably been happening for some time, but most of them have been going under the radar. But this one has been live because two top clubs have been involved, and one player that is very promising is also there. So it brings a whole picture of unprofessionalism between all the parties involved, and we hope that there is a solution moving forward, because transfers are continuing to happen, and there are going to be players moving from one club to another, one country to another. So there has to be an understanding of what is involved in terms of transfers, contracts, the people involved, and all that. So it's that is my opinion, and I hope there is a solution found in the future.
All right, thank you, Timo. Just picking up from there, are these players using the loopholes in the contract, talking about the legal part of it, to exploit the clubs they're playing for?
I, I think I would say we would want to let's try to look at the agents that are involved in the transfers as well, the player agents that are overseeing, because how would it happen that a player gets to sign for two clubs, and if the same agent is foreseeing their such activities, I think such people are unprofessional, and I think should be discontinued from, should be banned from the game of sport, because now you are pushing the player to a wrong direction. But also, I would say that probably in the upbringing of players, if we our players are brought up professionally through the youth ranks, if you feed them up aside from what we give them on the field of play, I mean, conduct, how do you conduct yourself as a professional player in professional football, or what are you supposed to do as a professional player? If you're now playing in a top flight league, you're having ambitions, dreams of just playing beyond the Soga United. You want to go as far as go to Europe, play in the top five leagues in the world. How do you embark on that journey? And throughout that journey, how do you conduct yourself? Of course, among the things this that he has fallen culprit already of signing for two clubs, and of which I doubt that such things our players are taken through in terms of upbringing. So to me, partly it goes back to what do we feed our players in preparation for professional football through the youth ranks as they go through different underage groups, even at club level where they are. Do we mentor them to be professional players, to conduct themselves in a professional way? So to me, I would say that the agent, his representative throughout this has got to be questioned as well. Should be summoned, should be answerable, because how does he oversee? Or was he involved or not in uh, in the player signing for two clubs? And then you hinted on something regarding players are going free of, leaving us free agents. I think that is something I would say probably short-sightedness from our teams, because I'll give an example of Sports Club Villa. Ever since Kenneth Semakula made his debut for the team, his breakthrough at the club, he's been impressive. He's been on national colors, and he's been impressive. And our Sports Club Villa, or our clubs are not able to see that probably there is something good at the end of the tunnel from this player. If it means increasing the money that give meeting his demands, why don't you try to put him to an angle of whereby you lower him to signing another contract? An example of this, teams like Porto, I'll give you an example of such teams from average leagues in Europe, in Sweden, in Belgium, in Austria, in Switzerland. I think the Portuguese league would be the best. These teams are milking a lot of money from sale of players. But how? You will check the release clause of the player. A player, by the time United comes for a player, probably they're going for Fernandez. He's got 3 years or 2 years left on his contract, and the release clause is over 50 million. And yet they didn't spend that money on buying such a player. How? They saw something in a player, in that they offered the player contract, no, targeting that in the next 3 years in the next 4 years, something big is coming out of this player. I think that is what we have lacked here in the country, because how many players, first team players at Sports Club Villa lost? I mean, Samakula was a big loss for Sports Club Villa to go scot free. I mean, as a free agent, they should have gotten some decent amount of money that they can use to prepare for their continental football, and not just them alone. I mean, KCC as well. Shaban departs after 2 seasons. You're not able to meet, and yet you have the capacity. Team like KCC, they have the capacity to meet what Shaban wanted, and the player goes just like that. At a point where he looked to have rediscovered himself, I think there is a lot that our clubs are missing out in terms of the financial bit of it. Business end, you're having this player, impressive. They have given you a good first season. Players has gotten, most especially these players that are getting their breakthroughs. I think there is a lot that you can harvest from these players, because a player will have an impressive season, lead to someone to the national team. A team like Wydad will come calling. Probably they need to get a defender, or whichever position that they're in search for a player, and you happen to be having one of those potential targets. I mean, you can harvest good money that comes from North Africa. If your player has got, let's say, maybe 2 more years tied on his contract, I mean, you have bargaining power. You can harvest something, you can ask for 150, 200,000 US dollars. At the end of the day, you walk out a happy team, because they will pay for you to release the player. They will have to buy out the contract. So that is something that some of our clubs are not seeing, which to me I would term as they're being short-sighted, in that if you don't get to meet the demands of the players, or try to convince him to a certain level, come to an agreement in the name of saying that it's very expensive. At the end of the day, you lose out on something probably bigger. Why not give the player, if the player has demanded for 3 million and he has been impressive at the club, give him the money. But at the end of the day, probably within 6 months or next 1 year, you're going to be selling such a player to a tune of 200,000 US dollars. So you weigh the business. Is it a loss or a win? At the end of the day, to me, I would say it's a short sightedness from some of our team administrators.
All right, we're about to sum up this. Just picking up from there, let's talk about AC Villa. Tony Kent.
Can I can I please add on what Sportsbridge has said?
Yeah, just briefly in a minute or two.
Yes, it's very interesting to hear what Sports uh, has shared with us, but it's quite, Lawrence, I request that you mute your. Thank you. Yeah, I've we have heard what Sports Blaze has shared, and ultimately one of the challenges that the clubs in Uganda are facing is that financial muscle. We have seen recently for the past 4 or 5 seasons that the longest contract, or the most one of the longest contracts given to a player, most of these clubs are giving at most 3-year contracts. And these 3-year contracts, most of the time, are terminated. And when they're not terminated, when it hits to the last year of the contract, you find that this player is already on the radar of some of these big clubs. And I honestly can't say that teams within Uganda can have that financial muscle and fight with a team from Tunisia, a top team from Tunisia, vying for the signing of Kenneth Semakula. It's very, very difficult for AC Villa to come up with that money, that financial money, and make or convince Kenneth Semakula, who is now a regular for the national team and try and tell him you need to stay. We are going to play in the CAF Champions League qualifiers. Whereas Tunisia is a bigger market, there is a bigger picture with Tunisian football. It's way ahead of Uganda, and this is not the only example. You can give quite a number of examples. Many players are living on freeze and are signing 1 year contracts. I think you're seeing the signings that Chitara is doing. I think all of their signings are 1 year contracts. You can see Oti has gone for a 1 year contract. You can see the likes of Marvin Nyanzi, 1 year contract. You can mention all the players that have signed with 1 year contracts, and you look at it and wonder what is the science behind that? Because the moment a player signs a 1 year contract, it is mostly the player that benefits. Because if the player has a good season and the club has to keep the player has the negotiating power and says that if you want me to stay, I need to sign. I need to have a signing on fee. So we have a challenge that there is a lack of financial muscle within these clubs, and also maybe the point that you've made of forward thinking, plan ahead, and put something in the contract which gives the club some power over negotiating so that they don't lose the player on a free completely, and that should be resolved. But I think that is a general issue within Uganda. We still lack that financial muscle. I don't expect KCCA to be uh, competing with a club like Al Hilal, which has just signed Muhammad Shaban, and I'm very sure Muhammad Shaban has pocketed some good dollars there. So it's it's difficult. It really is difficult. So we only look and see what happens there.
All right, all right, all right. Tony Kent, just pick up from there, just in like 3 minutes. Let's talk about the defending champions of the Uganda Premier League, that is AC Villa. They have parted ways with their coach, after 20 years without a silverware. The coach comes in, gives you something to rejoice, and boom, at the end of the season, you're starting the next season without a coach. What does it? Where does this leave AC Villa? And they're also going to compete in the FIFA Super 8. Briefly, Tony Kent, the Villa fan. Tony Kent, we can hear you. I don't know. Are you there? We just want to wrap this up. Maybe Timo, you can come on this one. Just briefly, you can give us your views on this as we sum it up.
Come again the question. Come again.
Come again the question. Come again the question.
Villa, the locker room in Villa, losing some of their players to their coach, after a good season. Where does this leave them?
Sports Club Villa, Sports Club Villa. They now these are deepens their wars as a team, because I mean you went to Sekafa, and you saw what they put out in Sekafa. It was not a satisfying performance as a team that you look out and say this is a club that will go and compete out in the CAF Champions League, where it's business. Here at Sekafa, at the Kagame Cup, it was moreover a chance for them to equip to prepare their team well, to see that they they strengthen their team, see where they have weaknesses, and strengthen ahead of the CAF Champions League preliminary round. But you realize that really it wasn't a convincing performance that they had. And then on top of that, they had departures of key players, Semakula in that defense. And you when you look at the team that is left behind, you struggle to see which player are you going to be counting on for Sports Club Villa as they head out ahead of next season, and then of course any other like event that is lined up for the team locally, and then of course on the continent. Realize there's a lot that they do first of all, there is a big burden of you being a defending champion and you replicating that performance and defending the league crown that had eluded them for 20 years. And then as well, the coach that probably could try to to make use of the players that he has at his disposal because he has been longer at the team. Uh, Probably understands that the players that are left, and now you've lost the coach as well, the head coach. I mean, there's just things are just deepening for Sports Club Villa because now you cannot lose your coach, lose out some of your best players as well. I mean, a team that is going for continental football, you'd want instead of losing, you'd want to reinforce more. Look at teams like uh, Mamelodi Sundowns. Look at other teams like Al Ahly. They are just reinforcing. Unless you're having probably a club shake-up like Simba is having, because that season didn't end well in Tanzania, so they had to have a club shake-up where a couple of players left, old guards, and then they had to bring in new players. But for Sports Club Villa, you can't afford to lose young players. Instead, they had to reinforce quality players into the team because it's quality that is demanded on the continent. You have to deliver quality football. If you want to survive on the continent, you must have quality. You must deliver quality. There is no space for mediocrity at a continental level. Continental football is juicy and it's strictly business, not taking mediocrity there. So at the end of the day, I mean, I will give you an example. Vipers, when they qualified for the very first time for the CAF Champions League, they had to reinforce because they knew what was coming ahead of them. It was tough, so they had to reinforce and see that they bring in new players that are going to add value into their team ahead of the competition, ahead of what they were walking into. Something which is the opposite at Sports Club Villa. Instead of adding, they are losing. So the things are just deepening at Sports Club Villa, and their continental journey already looks dull even before they get it started.
All right, thank you very much. I'd forgotten that Villa is having a qualifier knockout.